Hello students, this side Meena. So we will move with our first learning conditioning, that is known as a classical conditioning. These are very important theories that is given in the psychology, and you will see that after understanding these theories you can see and you can experience all these things in your day-to-day life also. So the classical conditioning was first given by the Ivan P. Pavlov. Earlier he was a physician and he was interested in the digestion system. So during his studies he noticed the dogs. So if he has noticed the dogs, so he has performed his experiment on the dogs. It should be remembered that there are so many psychologists who has done different type of experiment in the psychology. So it is on your part that you should remember which psychologist has taken which type of animal. So the Pavlov has taken dogs. He in his experiment what he has observed that the dogs start secreting saliva. Why it is happening? Because whenever they saw the empty plate, okay, what was in the empty plate, they know that in this plate they are going to get the food. So we should remember that this saliva secretion is a reflexive response to the food. What is the meaning of this reflexive response to the food? Mean to say, whenever the food will be seen by the dog, the saliva will be secrete. Okay, so the Pavlov for this designed one experiment. Why he has designed one experiment? Because he want to understand this process in detail. So in the first phase what happened? So there are the phases. In the first phase what happened? A dog was placed in the box and he was kept hungry for so many days. So this process was repeated a number of times on a different days. In the meantime, what happened? In the first phase what happened? That a simple surgery was conducted. What happened in that surgery? There was one tube. One end of the tube was inserted in the dog's jaw and the other side of the tube was put in the measuring glass. Like you can see here that how it has done, that one tube was inserted in the dog's jaw and another in the glass. So what happened in the second phase? In the second phase of the experiment, the dog was kept hungry, and after that the one end of the tube ending in the jaw and the other end in the glass jar, there was always a sound of bell. After the sound of the bell, immediately the food was served to the dog. The dog was allowed to eat the food. When this happened for some days, then what happened, that every time when the meat powder was presented or the food was presented, then it was preceded by a sound of bell. It means that whenever the Pavlov is going to serve the food to the dog, what he was doing? He was ringing the bell. There was a sound of the bell. So after a number of trials, a test trial was introduced in which everything was same. There was no change like the earlier trials. But what happened in this time? That there is a sound of the bell but no food was given to the dog. Then what happened? Still the saliva secretion is there. We were expecting that the dog is only secreting the saliva because when he saw the food, but here the conditioning is done with the sound of the bell, because when the sound of the bell is there, the dog starts secreting the saliva. So the dog's conditioning is with the sound of the bell, not with the food. This has been termed as a conditioning. So now after this theory we will discuss about the stages of conditioning, like what is the nature of the stimulus in this and what type of responses we have got during this conditioning. So in the first stage, before the conditioning of the dog with the food or the sound of the bell, the food is known as an unconditioned stimulus. Mean to say there is no conditioning with the food of the dog. After that the sound of the bell. So no relation between the secretion of the saliva with the US and with the sound of the bell. The nature of the response that we are getting here, the salivation, that is also unconditioned response. Mean to say we can't condition the salivation when we are giving the food to the dog. During the conditioning process, sound of the bell becomes conditioned stimulus, but the food is also the same, that is the unconditioned stimulus, because sound of the bell has the relation with the salivation that is secreted by the dog. After that, when everything is done, in the last stage sound of the well becomes CS, that is conditioned stimulus, and the salivation is known as a conditioned response. Mean to say, whenever there will be the sound of the bell, there will be the conditioned response that will in the form of salivation. So these things you should remember very carefully. In the same way, here it is also explained that unconditioned stimulus is our food, and after that salivation is there, which is known as a unconditioned response. But when the conditioning is done, what happened then? The salivation started when there is a sound of a bell. So this type of conditioning is also known as a SS learning and classical conditioning. Why it is called SS learning? Because in which one stimulus, that is the sound of the bell, becomes a signal for the another stimulus. What is our another stimulus? That is the food. So here one stimulus signify the possible occurrence of the another stimulus. Whenever we are producing the sound of the bell, the another stimulus is going to be produced, that is the food. We can also see this type of conditioning in our day-to-day life. Suppose if you are having a craving for to eat some type of sweet dishes, then there will be automatically a secretion of saliva that will give the signal to you that yes, there is a craving in your mouth. So this is also a conditioned response that you are producing towards the conditioned stimulus. Here what is the conditioned stimulus? That is the sweet dish. Like this, another example is also given that is related with the inflated balloon. When it burst in the hands of the child, then it make a loud noise. So it give a sense of fear to the child, and the child experience this thing. So next time whenever the child will hold that balloon, then automatically the conditioning will be there in the child that it can burst in my hand. So here the conditioned stimulus will be the balloon and the conditional stimulus will be the loud noise. Now we will discuss about some type of the determinants of the classical conditioning. What does we mean by them? It means that there are some type of factors that make our conditioning more stronger or the weaker. We will discuss about them now. Firstly, the one major point is the time relation between the stimuli. Mean to say, what is the time gap that we are presenting our stimulus response, that we are providing us conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus, so that we can get the response. So in this, our first three, that is simultaneous conditioning, delay conditioning, and the trace conditioning are known as a forward conditioning. After that, the last one, that is known as a backward conditioning. So we will consider first three, one the forward conditioning and the last one is the backward conditioning. In the first simultaneous conditioning, what are telling us about the time limit, that when we are presenting the conditioned stimulus, that was in our theory classical conditioning stimulus was the sound of the bell and the unconditioned stimulus was the food. When we are producing them at the same time, then it will be known as a simultaneous conditioning. After that, the another one is the delayed conditioning. It means we are onset is here, the word is written onset, mean to say the beginning of something. When we are start giving the conditioned stimulus, after that we are giving the unconditioned stimulus. Mean to say, like in the simultaneous conditioning, we are not giving them together. Here we are preceding them. What is preceding? After the CS we are giving the US. So in the another one, there is a trace conditioning. Trace conditioning mean to say there will be the gap between the two. In the backward conditioning, what is there? We are reversing the situation. In the first one, what we were doing? We were giving firstly the CS and after that we are giving the US. But this is now a backward conditioning. So what we are doing here? Firstly we are giving the US and after that we are presenting the CS. We should remember one thing, that out of these four, the most important and most effective conditioning is the delayed conditioning procedure, because in this there is a less number of acquisition or trials are, because there is a need of less trials so that we can get one particular response. Our next one is second point in the determinants is the type of unconditioned stimuli. Like in the classical conditioning, we were having the type of unconditional stimuli, that is the food. So here we are studying basically two type of unconditioned stimuli. That first one is known as the appetitive, and second one is known as the aversive. Appetitive stimuli mean to say that elicits mean to say that produce a specific type of response, that we are like when we see the sweet dish, then what is happening? We are having a craving to eat. When we feel thirsty, then what we desire? We feel to drink water. So all these things are automatically elicit response. So these response give us satisfaction and pleasure. We feel calmness and peace when we drink the water. On the other hand, what is there? The aversive conditioning. This is a painful responses that we are getting. Okay, if you are not doing your work properly, then the punishment is there. You are getting the low grades. So this is comes under in this, when like you want to eat something, you want to eat sweets. The same example we can carry here, but the taste is not good. So what is that? That is the aversive conditioning. After that, there is another point, that is intensity. Intensity mean to say the deepness, how much influence the one type of stimulus is having on the experimenter, so that he can give us the particular response that we want. The intensity only depends on the conditioned stimulus, which type of stimulus we are providing to our experimenter, so then we can get the particular response, and it will needs a very less trials. First there are the exam, and you are preparing for that. So exam will be your stimuli towards you are going to produce your responses. So if there is a intensity in you that you want to get good marks, so automatically give better responses and you will do the hard work. So in this way efforts will be very less, because now you are internally ready to do the same things. In the same way, if we are talking about in the terms of classical conditioning, the intensity of food in terms of dog is very high, because the dog was kept hungry for several days. So the intensity of conditioned stimuli is very high. That's why there are less number of trials to produce the stimulus response, that is the secretion of saliva by the dog. So that's all about this theory. That is, so read it thoroughly to understand better. Thank you.